Mr. Emmanuel Lignuie, Abekansa, or acting regional director, EPA Upper West Region. Wabekansa, Ebedi and Komo Niaji. Some bit of clarity, Eddie Frino. Mr. Lignuie, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well.
All right. So we are being told by our correspondent that there is a case of an increase in sand winning activities in your region. How true or otherwise is this?
Well, that is true. To start with, let me say that, let me explain what sand mining is, which the public actually calls sand winning. Technically, it's called sand mining. And sand mining is a surface mining activity. And in the Upper West region, sand mining involves clearing the land of grass and trees, which inhibit access to sand deposits, and then digging for sand and transporting it to construction sites. So this is what sand mining is about. But in the Upper West region, the situation is that sand mining is not controlled. I will highlight the situation briefly. Usually, prospective sand miners identify passes of land which are rich in sand deposits, and then they go ahead to seek the consent of landowners to mine the sand. The landowners charge a fee per trip of sand. The fee is at least 10 cedis per trip of sand, depending on the size of the tipper truck which is being used to convey the sand. And the sand is mined mostly in areas where the sand miners have found it and have been able to secure the consent of the landowner to mine the sand. And so some of the areas where they mine the sand are quite environmentally sensitive, such as watershed areas of some dams. And usually after mining, the sand miners do not reclaim the pits. By this I mean they do not spread any topsoil on top of the bare land to facilitate maybe soil formation and revegetation. Now, this practice is quite on the high side in the one municipality and a few communities in the surrounding districts such as Naduli and Wa West, primarily because there is high demand for sand for construction of houses in the Wa municipality. Wa is quite a growing town, and there is high demand for sand for construction purposes. And the activity is growing and uncontrolled because there are challenges in terms of difficulties in monitoring sand mining operations and enforcing regulations on sand mining. Because the sand miners on their own locate the sand deposits and seek the consent of the landowners, it is difficult to identify the areas where they are doing the mining and to enforce compliance. And often because these sites are mostly dispersed, because the sand miner will want to mine the sand where he or she finds it and has secured the consent of the landowner. And this is difficult for the Environmental Protection Agency to identify, such sites. And also because the mining is done, sometimes some of the miners just fetch some small quantities of sand from an area where they have found the sand. So you have pockets of, places where the sand mining is done. They are not together in an area with well-defined boundaries, which are easily amenable to enforcement of regulations on sand mining. And also some of the sand miners, they are not well organized into groups that are identifiable and can easily be located to lead us more or less to the places where they mine the sand and to get the activity, to bring the activity under control. And so sand mining, let me highlight some of the effects which we have observed and what we are doing, we have started to do to bring the activity under control. Now, the effects we have observed, some of the effects we have observed are that in the areas where sand is mined, we are losing the forest cover and topsoil. And this leads to land degradation because the clearing of trees for sand mining and the removal of sand, which is often the topsoil, leads to the creation of bare patches of land on which plants cannot grow. Also, because they remove trees and also remove the topsoil, the carbon dioxide, which is a warm gas, which is often trapped and stored in undisturbed soil and in green vegetation, is often released into the atmosphere, contributing to temperature increase within the locality. And this, over a long-term period, has some effect on climate change.
All right, Mr. Lignuie, what I want to establish is, seeing that this is of a concern to you, what steps are you taking to ensure you clamp down on this?
Yes. As a concern, this activity, let me say that, constitutes a violation of the Environmental Assessment Regulations, 1999, LI 1652, which indicates that no activity which is listed in the schedule to the regulations can commence unless the activity is registered with the Environmental Protection Agency and an environmental permit issued by the agency in respect of the undertaking. The other aspect of the violation is that the regulations say that no activity which, in the opinion of the EPA, has significant adverse impacts on the environment can commence unless the activity is registered with the EPA and an environmental permit issued in respect of the activity. Now, as it concerns the Environmental Protection Agency, we have, of course, noticed that this activity is a violation of the regulations, and we have observed some of the effects that it has on the environment. I have earlier on highlighted the challenges that have brought us to where we are. But at this point, what we have decided to do is that we want to issue environmental permits to individuals and groups that are engaged in sand mining. And to do that, we have first of all organized a stakeholder sensitization meeting. In fact, that meeting was held on Wednesday, 17th March. That was just last week. And at that meeting, we invited the landowners, we invited sand miners, we invited assembly members of the communities in which sand mining is known to be going on. So at the meeting, we took them through some of the effects that I have highlighted in this discussion, and we've made them to understand. In fact, we tried on the whole to develop a common understanding between the EPA and the landowners and sand miners that sand mining is an activity which has negative impacts on the environment and constitutes a violation of the Environmental Assessment Regulations, including a highlight of the challenges that led us to where we are in terms of the difficulties that we have had in controlling it. And so, building on this common understanding, we have encouraged the sand miners, to organize themselves into groups that we can identify. We have, at the end of the meeting that we held with them, we made it known to them that from the beginning of June this year, 2021, we will begin to issue environmental permits for sand mining undertakings in the Upper West region. And the permits, the environmental permits will come with conditions that will specify how to mine sand. For example, the permit will specify or prescribe that when mining sand, you have to save some major trees that exist within the parcel of land containing the sand deposits that you are mining. Because currently, in some sites, you will find that they have done almost total clearing of the trees, which is not good. So the permit will specify that in mining sand, you have to save a specified number of trees, maybe per acre of land, where you are mining the sand, so that when you finish mining the sand, this tree that will remain standing will be the source of seeds that will be dispersed by wind and by birds that perch and feed on the tree, so that the seed dispersal will help to revegetate the land. Also, they will be required, the permit will specify that they are required to preserve certain portions of topsoil within the parcel of land where they mine the sand, so that when they finish taking the sand, those portions of topsoil which have not been removed will be scooped and spread over the bare land surface to facilitate soil formation. And when this topsoil is spread over the bare land surface, what it means is that the seeds that will be dispersed from the major trees that will be left standing will also, when they fall on the ground, will have some fertile soil that will help them to germinate and grow when rain falls and there is moisture.
Right.
And of course, they will also be required to observe some buffer distances to environmentally sensitive sites, such as water bodies, particularly dams, so that the vegetation that will be left standing will over a long period help to contain the sand that will be eroded from the bare land patches.
Right.
And this will be trapped and prevented from getting deposited in these water bodies to prevent sedimentation of the water bodies,
right.
which often makes them
Lignuie.
Yes.
Yes, we would have to end the conversation here, but we are grateful you made time to join us today, sir.
Thank you very much.